Hi, my name is Kelli Jones, and I'm a teacher consultant with the Arizona Geographic Alliance. In this lesson, we will be looking at Journey Through Time, Arizona, from Territory to Statehood. This is a lesson for grade 4 and should take approximately 2 class periods. The overview of this lesson is that Arizona has a rich history that abounds in connections to geography and civics. As a celebration of the centennial has passed, we will take a look at the 100 years of Arizona's past and recognize the human and physical processes that have shaped the state. The purpose of this lesson is that students will learn about Arizona's early days and follow its path from territory to statehood while exploring the movement of capitals, founding people, symbols, and culture. Materials needed for this lesson are student worksheets, and all of these student worksheets are included. The Journey Through Time, What's Your Role worksheet, the Role Play Day in the Life Journal, the Role Play Student cards, the Arizona State Symbol Matching cards, the Arizona Moving Capital worksheet, and the Arizona Acrostic. You will also need an Arizona outline map, and there's one that you can get at the Arizona Geographic Alliance website, and that link is provided here. Also helpful to have is an Arizona Atlas, and I've provided the ISBN number. This is optional, but it does eliminate some printing and or searching for types of maps. So here is the Atlas, the Arizona Atlas. It was created specifically for teachers in Arizona to cover the standards, and so it has maps, all different types of maps for different landmarks, biomes, regions, topography, rivers, its connection to different historic events that are in the standards. And the nice thing about it is at the back, it also talks about how each of these maps could tie into lessons, for the state of Arizona. And then you'll also need blank note cards. Objectives for this lesson: students will be able to describe ways in which Arizona has changed over time from territory to statehood and to today. Express elements that are unique to Arizona's state and culture. Examine the people who have made a significant impact on the settlement of Arizona, and identify and locate physical and human features of Arizona. In session 1, students will be involved in role play. So as students come into class, you will hand each one of them a role play card. Now these are provided and should be cut out before class starts. There are 18 separate role play cards, so depending on the size of your class, you may need to make copies and have duplicate roles. So for example, you might have 2 miners, 2 ranchers, 2 homesteaders, etc. Just make sure you have enough so that there's one for each student. As you hand those to each student, they're going to read them so they become a little bit more familiar with their character. Explain to students that they will be learning about Arizona's past through the eyes of their person who lived during that time. Tell them that the card they were given will help them to understand what life was like for different individuals and groups who lived at the state during territorial and early statehood days. So at this time, you're going to hand students a blank note card and ask them to write one sentence about their person. So they would have read over the information and write one sentence about them. So for example, I am John Goodwin, the first governor of Arizona Territory. Or I am a miner looking for copper. So just write one sentence that represents their character or their person. After they've done this, you're going to hand out the Journey Through Time, What's Your Role worksheet. Using their student card, they're going to create a timeline of the major dates listed, or the major years listed. So each student role play card has 4 years listed of significant events that happened for that person or that group. So they're going to list those in chronological order on the timeline, just the years, and then list the years and what events correlated with that below. Once they've completed this worksheet, students are going to line up in chronological order, starting with the earliest event on their note card. Once students have lined up in chronological order, you will ask them to each read their statement card. For example, I am John Goodwin, the first governor of Arizona. So students will line up in order, and they'll each read one sentence about who they are so that other students have an idea to learn about the other early settlers. Once they've done this, you can ask students to return to their desk, and you'll hand out a role play day in the life journal worksheet for each student, to each student. At this time, you'll ask students to write a daily journal entry of what one day might be like. Now, you want them to select one of the years from their actual student note card so that it's more realistic. And I would just suggest using the current date. So, for example, if today is July 2nd, they would put July 2nd and then whatever year corresponds to one of their events. And then just write a daily journal. And I have a student sample here. The student was given the homesteader card, and so they've read about and learned a little about what a homesteader is. And so I have the student sample here. Dear Journal, my family and I are headed to Arizona. Papa says we can start over and look for gold on our new land. I am excited, but it will be hard work, Mama says. I am already missing my friends and home we left behind, but I am ready for this adventure. And then you can see they've drawn a picture of a covered wagon headed towards the mountains. And then they've just created a name, Melly, and their position was a homesteader. So again, just sort of to put them in the actual shoes of the person or the group that they were given. At the end of, as students are writing, you want to encourage them to express what they might have felt, describing the physical land, maybe the weather, human cultural elements that maybe would have been part of their day. And again, pointing out that they will also draw the picture at the bottom. For an end of the day assessment, on the board or overhead, write these 4 questions. What is your parents' job? What is the job of your person or group? How are these jobs the same? And how are these jobs different? You can ask those students to reflect on those questions, either having them write them in their agenda, on a note card, on a sheet of paper, just somewhere that they're going to be able to access those later. At the end of session 1, you're going to want to assign some homework so students have an opportunity to share their experience with their families. So they're going to take home their student role play card and the answers to the questions that were on the board with them. And they're going to share some of their thoughts. And the parents might help them even in coming up with some of the answers. So for an example, right here on the screen, you can see what is your parents' job? They wrote, my mom works at Fry's grocery store. My dad works in construction. What is the job of your person or group? My job is a miner. So that was the student role card they were given. How are these jobs the same? Miners and construction workers both work outside in the natural environment. How are these jobs different? Miners are looking for raw materials. Grocery workers are selling prepared goods. So again, just sort of looking at how these roles or how these positions might relate to jobs that are still happening in Arizona today. For session 2, we're going to be looking at symbols and mapping. So what you're going to want to do prior to class is print out and cut the Arizona state symbols matching cards, and those are provided for you. They're also provided on pages 4 and 5 of that Arizona Atlas that I showed you at the beginning. So you're going to see that you're going to have a name, a category, and a picture. And so for each one, they're going to all be cut up, not out of the Atlas, but we've provided matching cards for you so that you have those available. And you're going to hand each student one of those as they walk into the classroom. Once each student has one, you're going to give them about 5 minutes to get out of their seat and try to match the category, the name, and the picture so they're all standing in sets once they're matched up. As they're matched up, you're going to either attach them to the wall, to the board in some manner, push pins or tape, so that they're in matched sets. Once students return to their seat, you're going to go over the matched sets and make sure they're correct. So for example, you may have state fish, and then Apache trout, and then a picture of an Apache trout or a picture of a fish. You want to make sure that the name, the category, and the picture are all matching. And again, if you do have the Arizona Atlas, you can have students all open to pages 4 and 5 and look to make sure those are all matching. Next, you're going to hand out the Arizona Moving to the Capital worksheet and Arizona outline map. Students will use the Arizona Atlas or whatever maps of Arizona that you have provided to them at this time. Within the worksheet, they'll be looking at the different capitals as it moved from Fort Whipple to Prescott to Tucson, back to Prescott again, and then finally to Phoenix. They will answer some questions about what counties those are located in, and some different questions related to the movement of that capital. Continuing on with session 2, once students are finished with the map, ask students to get into groups of about 4 or 5 and have them share their experience as their person. So they're going to tell you about their day as a rancher, or what their life as Charlotte Hall was like, for example. So you want students to be able to get in groups so that they can share experiences of different positions within the state, from early territory and early statehood days. Then once they've shared this, students are going to create in groups an Arizona acrostic map. So using the letters from the state Arizona, they're going to talk about some of the different experiences, both cultural and physical, that they learned about related to the capital, related to their different positions. And so I have a student sample of that. And I'll just go ahead and I'll show it to you, and then I'll read it. A long time ago in 1863 became a territory. Railroads brought people and supplies. In 1912 became a state. Zinc, copper, silver, and gold were common. Once water was hard to find. Now canals bring water from the Colorado River. Arizona is more than a desert, it's a home. So that's an example of students who got together as a group, who came up with different aspects of Arizona cultural and physical geography, and were able to apply it to an acrostic poem. The last thing you want to do for this session is to write the words physical and human on the board or overhead, and then go back to the match symbol sets from the beginning of class, and one at a time ask students if that is a physical or a human feature, and then you can just either tape them or maybe write them on either side, either physical or human, just to let students know that the symbols do involve both physical and human elements of Arizona's culture. For assessment in social studies, you're going to be grading the What's Your Role timeline. You want to make sure that students have their dates in chronological order. The Moving the Capital in Arizona outline map, you want to make sure that students have correctly identified the different places that they're required to onto the map. And the state symbols. You can give students a quiz later on to match up the different symbols to the categories and names. In reading and writing, you're going to be grading the role play Day in the Life journal. Students can be graded in a variety of ways, but I would suggest, if you're grading using a 6 traits rubric, to look at the presence of voice as the strongest trait that you're grading for, because really that's what the goal of that journal was. Also looking at ideas. The Arizona acrostic map, basically it's a group project, so you can grade it, give a group grade, but you want to make sure that, all of the letters relate to Arizona in some way, again, either physically or culturally or historically. Extensions, if you want to learn more about Arizona's territorial days or statehood, early statehood days. In math, you can use the scale from the map to measure the distance that the state capital traveled as it was going from one city to the next. In science, you can describe how science and technology have improved the lives of people in Arizona from territorial times to today. In social studies, you can explore other people from Arizona's past and present that have made significant impacts, and there's a list of ideas there. In writing, you can use the name of the person or the group from the role play student card to write an acrostic poem. So for example, if you were a railroad worker, maybe write an acrostic poem using the word railroad, and that student individually could write a poem about how railroad workers or how the railroad was important to the state. Visual performing arts, you could write a play involving several of the people or groups from the role play card and find props that represent the people, places, symbols, and culture of Arizona. Sources I used for this lesson, there were several printed sources that gave me information, just historical information and background information for the student role cards. a few online sources, and then where I got all of the images for. And again, most of these images were used in the student role play cards. So that wraps up our lesson on Arizona territorial to statehood, and I hope you can use it in your classroom.